Hi all, welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So this is Tuesdays, 9 UK time. This week, yes, you might have guessed it, we're going to carry on looking at games of Garry Kasparov, one of the greatest players ever to have lived, one of our greatest world champions ever. Now this game I'd like to show you to start off with this week. Yep, hi all on stream, hi all. This game I'd like to show you is against Borovsky. That was a very big name in chess, Aleksandr Borovsky. Let me see, pronunciation at chessgames.com.
Aleksandr Borovsky.
One more.
Aleksandr Borovsky.
Aleksandr Borovsky. And so he was, he's 62 years old, still alive. He was a grandmaster in 1975, so that's 8 years before this game. A very accomplished player. He was born in Lviv, which is now known as Ukraine. He currently lives in Slovenia and plays for the Olympic team there. So he's noted for his uncompromising style of play and for his classical opening repertoire, including openings such as the Queen's Gambit, Royal Lepers and French Defence. So a very, very accomplished player. One of his achievements was coming second to Kasparov in the 1982 Moscow Interzonal. Both players qualifying for the candidate matches, and he lost to Kasparov in the first round of the cycle the next year. So anyway, so yeah, he was one of Kasparov's rivals really for the World Championship. So let's see this game. Kasparov playing white, d4. Let's actually add a kibitzer and connect to Livebook. Okay, I'll just add a kibitzer. Hold on. Let's add Dini. Okay, so d5 from Borovsky. c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6. Kasparov chose here c takes d5. You might wonder, doesn't that help black a bit? It does open up the bishop. You might be right there, but there's other aspects to this. Bishop g5 is the main move. Bishop e7, e3. Quite often players with black play c6 here. An example game continuation like this is quite well known. Okay, so instead of c6 we have h6. Bishop drops back. Black castles here. Bishop d3. b6. Knight f3. It looks fairly standard stuff so far. It's on the beaten track. Quite often players with black play knight bd7 here. And this is a little bit on the unusual side to play c5. But knight bd7, for example, like this. Well, then c5 is played anyway quite often. So we're very likely to transpose c5 or knight bd7. You'd think it might transpose anyway. Knight e5. We have knight bd7 here. Now, although it might be tempting to consider a move like f4, I think it's probably okay technically to play f4 in this position actually, but there's another move just putting a little bit more pressure without needing f4, because it can weaken the light squares. We have this move bishop f5, so putting some more pressure on black's position, quite often discouraging say rook c8, because then there'll be things like bishop takes f6 and the bishop will be hitting c8. So it's kind of an annoying move, and it's kind of tempting black potentially to weaken the position to kick it out. It's difficult to kick that bishop out of the f5 square here at the moment. Just for the record, if we have g6, which is a ridiculous move, ready to play, well, let's have a look. Actually, it's not entirely ridiculous. I think it just leads to a small edge for white. That's like a pawn. Maybe g6 is actually almost playable actually. Actually, it's one of the engine moves. G6 is one of the top engine moves. Wouldn't have thought so intuitively, but yeah, maybe. G6, interesting. In the game, we have actually, in a way, a more committal move than G6. Which, funny enough, is Houdini's top choice, G6. But no, we have a sort of more committal move. But what can black do if he's not playing rook c8? This is a bit tied down, actually, this position. If black played, just demonstrate rook c8, as I mentioned, I thought it was immediately preventing because the bishop takes f6. Yeah, that would just lose the exchange. There might actually even be stronger, just technically. But anyway. Rook e8, then maybe f4 here. Yeah, maybe f4 now. Okay, so black just took on e5, which changes everything dramatically, the pawn structure here. D takes e5. Now we've got pressure on d5. We've got the double pawns. Interesting. Question, well, black played knight e8. If he goes to e4, it seems actually white here might have a shot in this position. Yes, a very good shot in this position. This didn't happen. Knight e8 was played. Can you see what white can play here? If I give you 20 seconds, white to play here, just to make sure we can understand also some of the variations which were behind the scenes of this game. The knight went to e8 in the game. Why didn't the knight go to e4? There's a move here which is actually quite strong, gives white a clear advantage. Can anyone see? Okay, one taker so far on stream, and okay, not bishop takes e7 because note the knight is on c3 here, I think. So in fact, either knight takes or taking is okay, because this position, I think there's queen takes e5 hitting two pieces. So not bishop takes e7. There's also this as well, which is fairly equal. No, the thing is about this position is actually the move knight takes d5, because if bishop takes h4, then we have bishop takes e4 holding d5. If bishop takes here, then we have bishop takes here taking on d5 with advantage. Whatever way we do this, after knight takes d5, it's worse for black. If takes, we take there, then we take on e7. This is better for white. If here, just carry this on a bit, here. And if takes here, I think we just take the knight. If the bishop goes back, then we just go in with the rook. It's all leading to an advantage for white, actually. Even this position with the knight stranded on e4, this is actually good for white when it comes out, but it's good for white as well, technically. So actually, yeah, the knight went back to e8, so basically it's almost a tactical liability on e4. It's actually a tactical liability here. So anyway, this is probably the best move, knight e8. Yeah, okay. So with the bishop attacked, yeah, the bishop just dropped back. We have knight c7, but now leaning in on the king side with queen g4, very interesting. There's pressure all around the place, but note, you know, rook is vacated for d1 to eye up the queen here. Queen gets out of the way. We have a fascinating move against this queen e8 though, fascinating, which is bishop d7, just sort of putting the queen in an uncomfortable spot. The queen goes to d8. If the queen goes to b8, this is interesting, here it runs into a nasty pin with e6, so that's undesirable. This position is actually losing for black here because of knight b5. It's actually losing for black. So the queen's forced to e8. This is really rather to d8. Very uncomfortable spot for the queen. Believe it or not. Rook ad1. And already, yeah, it seems dangerous because things like e6 still could be dangerous. We have h5, trying to lure the queen away from the bishop. But the queen just drops back here. h4. Bishop goes to f4. And you might wonder, hold on a sec, this looks a bit strange, doesn't it? This position looks a bit strange. Black played bishop g5. If he tries nudging the bishop like this, I think just queen g4. And if f5, well, we can take en passant. So there's no g5, but bishop g5 was played, at least giving the queen e7, that e7 square. Bishop f5. And now here, after bishop f5, it looks as though, well, with this pin on the d pawn, if white has another move, he'll play knight e4 here, hitting that bishop and popping into an awkward place for black. Black here played g6, trying to nudge this bishop away. Okay, so here it gets really interesting now. Does the bishop want to be moved away? If I said to you white to play here, what would you play here? So try and get into the finesses of the position. I'll give you 20 seconds again. In the particular finesses of the position, what do you think is playable here? Black has moved a few pawns here. These pawns around his king. Should black be able to be punished in this position for these seemingly weakening pawn moves? What do you think? Would you just move the bishop away? There's a slight snag if the bishop just drops back. If the bishop just casually drops back, yeah, maybe taking, and actually f5 becomes possible, and we've actually got a nice blockade square potentially for the knight at some point, maybe after d4, to safely make it safe for the d5 pawn. That might be okay. Say like this is okay for black, this position here. So the bishop might not want to casually drop back here. In fact, Kasparov played knight e4, so if he's threatening bishop takes g5 and knight takes g5, black, though, surely black can take on f4, and he does, and then snap up an extra piece, yeah? Because, yeah, I mean, white could throw in a check, but I don't think it does anything. Kasparov's idea was to take here, not throw in the check. If we have a look at this position for a moment, well, his bishop's hanging whatever happens. If he throws in the check, actually that just makes things better for black, because this position, black would have the resource rook h8. That king coming there provides rook h8, and the king could escape in this context. So better not actually play the check, because playing the check gives rook h8 as a resource, essentially. No, instead just e takes f4, and leaving the king there. It's hemming in the rook, yeah, for the moment. So g takes, it's a piece sack. And now, in this position, now knight f6 and knight g5 threaten the crude mating scheme. Borovsky resourcefully though just extinguishes this, getting a few pieces for the queen with d takes e4, so he gives up his queen. First though, a check is thrown in, and then the queen is taken, and then this pawn is taken, so collecting a few pawns here. Interesting dynamic. 7 pawns against 5. Queen plunges in to e7 actually here. This might not have been the most accurate, it seems. Possibly, it seems more accurate might be the check actually, and then f5. Idea e6. Interesting. But this is dangerous. Let's have a look at this. This position. Dangerous. Yeah, it starts to get dangerous like this. Up here. Yeah, this can get dangerous in its own right, this continuation. So yeah, it's a very interesting position, but actually Kasparov went to e7. Okay. Still, this is very dangerous for black, clearly. And black actually didn't react as you might expect, like protecting the knight. If he protects the knight simply, then indeed f5 comes here with a vengeance. And that's really dangerous. But black played a really incredibly resourceful move himself, which nearly equalizes, actually. Nearly, well, in some variations, can I say, maybe not ultimately. In some lines, this could potentially have been really dangerous. It's a liberating move for black in the face of losing material here. A great resource if he wasn't playing Kasparov, especially. So let's see, black to play here. Very resourceful, especially if he wasn't playing Kasparov. Black to play. What does black play in this position? Okay, very resourceful e3. It liberates that bishop and also provides resources like this. So for example, white's got to be careful. If he takes the knight, e2, and it's black that ends up winning here. If rook e1, bang, rook d1. What do we do here? Terrible. This would be a disaster. Black would have 2 rooks and a bishop. Be better for black. e3 is very dangerous. Yeah, so taking on c7 would be a mistake. And if white takes the pawn, rook d2, and we're on g2. Liberating, isn't it? Technically white has e4 though. Yeah, and can actually wriggle a bit. It's not so clear cut, it's still a bit messy. Sorry, queen d7 there. Pardon me. Alright, so interesting resource e3, but Kasparov plays one of the better moves against it. Possibly f3 is really good here, because if this position doesn't work, we have then king f2. So possibly that was the best continuation. Just simply f3 to give the king that resource, king f2. It's funny, behind the scenes of this game, you don't want to give the king moves which liberate pieces and stuff. The king movements are very delicate, but yeah, f3 would be good. We see here rook e1. Okay, again, black can't do this now because f5 with idea like e6 is crushing. So actually he takes on f2, And a bit of a king chase, check. Well, not much. The king's brought to e2, check. This is very good for white ultimately with best play though. The pawns really help the queen here, although nominally black's got enough material. They're not coordinated enough here, it seems. They're also away from the king a bit. Knight d4. Now the pawns finally help the queen quite a lot here after e6. So one of the points here is after e6, it's smashing through the 7th rank. If takes, then we have f6, threatening queen g7, and if knight f5, that just loses to that, winning the knight. So this is pretty bad. This after e6, pretty bad for black. It's losing. Rook f8 is played. We have check. e7, very forcing. f6, threatening mate again. Knight e6. If rook g8, I think we could just take this rook actually, or just mate in one. Even simple, just mate in one. Okay, so knight e6. So this is not mate in one, but check. And here actually, with this move king g8, Borovsky resigned. The neatest continuation here for white. I wonder if you can spot it. I'll give you the first. Pardon me. Give you the first move. Check. Can you see after this check what white can play in this position? White's play. This is just. This didn't happen. White's play here. Can you see there's a. Move here, which is quite clear cut in this position. Can you see? So the game ended before this, yeah. The game ended earlier. So white's play. Actually, that looks interesting. Queen takes e6. This is quite good as well. This is probably winning as well. But also as well, there's these loose pieces, yeah. So queen a4 is quite good. Just winning material there. That's quite good as well. Okay, yeah, so interesting game. So the highlight of this game, well, it seems as though that bishop f5 was very, very interesting, putting a lot of pressure on black's position early on, the bishop f5. And obviously the piece sack was interesting. So black sacked his queen, but the pawns with the queen were too much. So interesting game. Moscow 1983. I hope you enjoyed that one. Okay. Yeah, let's have a look at another interesting game now. Okay, my next interesting game for tonight. Now this is against Božidar Ivanović. Let's try and get a pronunciation on this one. Ivanovic, maybe. Ivanović, I think Ivanović. Nope, there's no pronunciation help. So anyway, this guy was a GM in 1977. He was born in Yugoslavia, in Cetinje, Yugoslavia. He won the Yugoslavian Championship 3 times actually. Božidar Ivanović. In 1973, 81 and 83. He also won the FR Yugoslavian Champion in 1994. Okay, so this game played in Nixik, 1983. D4 for Kasparov. Knight f6. C4. We have e6. Knight c3. Bishop b4. Yeah, we got Nimzo. Rubinstein variation. e3. At the moment. c5. But now we go into a Simish variation, where white is offering double pawn to the black, but he's strengthening his centre a bit. So we have this position d5. White usually takes here. Knight e2, b6. Black would seem to have the idea of exchanging off to weaken white a bit on the light squares. You know, a nice bind on e4. It looks all pretty useful to play bishop a6. f3. Although bishop a6 might be playable, it's not actually played here. Rook e8 for the moment. White castles. Now bishop a6. Does white have any potential here? Black's playing all the right stuff, isn't he? Getting rid of this good bishop and leaving the bad bishop. Isn't black playing his trump cards very well? It's a bit topical there. Trump cards very well. Or has white got the trump cards? In case anyone's wondering, years time looking at this on YouTube, yes, the US general election is on us very soon, later tonight, between Donald Trump, yes, and okay. So anyway, so knight g3 was played. Bishop takes d3, getting off the light square bishops. Okay, so knight c6. Bishop b2. Isn't this bishop bad? And also, can it be hemmed in? It's hemmed in. Yeah, black takes up the offer of hemming in that bishop. It might be interesting just to keep the tension there for a moment. Rook c8. Might be interesting. Also, you know, black might have a plan of trying to do this. Just get more control over e4 if we can drive away that knight. It's not such a bad idea either, actually. Okay, anyway, black kind of released the tension, but with justification, it seems, because hasn't black got good control over things at the moment? Rook a e1. The thing is, e4 does seem to be on the cards here. It seems too late for this. It seems a little too late to try and undermine white's control of e4. Because white is able to get in e4 next. h5 is played. Yeah, trying to drive away this knight. Now, if h4, that's okay. Queen c7, that'd be okay for black. This position is interesting because I think let's have a quick look at it. There's resources here. Knight g4. Yeah, with the queen eyeing, it's quite okay for black potentially. But anyway, h4 isn't bothered with. Kasparov just plays e4. So there's a question here. Black reacted with g6. So what if black played h4 here? He played g6. What if he plays h4 here? It doesn't work like clockwork, black's plan here. There's a fly in the ointment here. Otherwise this would be possible and logical. So this didn't happen in the game. Can you see a really good move for white in this position? White to play. You might have to disregard this bishop and just, I know it looks terrible, but black has weakened his king a little bit, right? There's two pawns in front of the king, so you've got to balance the issues here on both sides. What does white play in this position? which would give an advantage technically. Can you see? Yeah, white doesn't have to bother with e5. This would be inferior actually to something else. If e5, black actually justifies black. Black would be fine. The bishop would be hemmed in. Black would be okay. No, but the problem is actually knight f5, temporary offer of the pawn. It's too dangerous to take that pawn. There's not just queen g5, actually there's knight takes g7 as well. Both of them dangerous, but let's go with queen g5. g6. Seems like resource right. c6 hangs in this line. That's no good for black. c6 hangs. Yeah. If here and here, well, actually we can do this and still piece up. Yeah, so knight f5 is good whatever way you cut it in this position. Knight f5 is dangerous. It introduces queen g5 and even knight takes g7 actually, but queen g5 is the primary threat. So black didn't go for h4, he played actually g6, depriving this knight f5. But now look at this, dark squares, dark square bishop, no counterpart. Where's the counterpart? Bishop just goes to c1. It's got a nice road here. And again this question turns up though, can't black play this and hit e4? Black played knight h7, why on earth didn't he play h4 here? Actually there's an answer here as well in this position. So in the game he played knight h7, why doesn't he play h4 here? What does white play? White play here. Anyone? There's two ways actually. You can play queen g5 as well. This is quite good. Or knight f5 actually. It's possible. So say takes, we just do this. This is crushing because we got check. Bang, rook takes e4. And knight takes f7 is the most crushing to avoid any queen sack, really, threatening queen h6 and queen h8. Yeah, this is crushing. And if g takes, then we got check. And stronger maybe than, well, stronger than that is taking here first. And if here, then that's a mate in 6, showing the power of the bishop. It's going to be mating anyway. This is, yeah. So this is devastating for black. Even stronger than taking here. I mean, that's good, but bishop h6, just weaving a mating in that. Yeah, threatening check there, mate in 2. If here, again, still forcing a checkmate. So So yeah, it seems knight f5 here is a killer in this position. Black's best might actually be the weird looking h3, but then queen h6. So we're threatening mate of knight h5, g4. Takes. Yeah, black's king's position has been compromised essentially quite badly. And the rooks, I mean, it's just so loose around the king. Yeah, there's threats of rook f6. Yeah. So yeah, it seems as though h4 is not possible here. This is all seems to be a bit tragic. That h4 never seems to work. So we have this knight h7. So white's not even threatened with anything yet. He could even probably play e5 in this position. But he plays actually queen h6, which introduces actually an idea of just putting a pawn to f6 to mate on g7, f5, f6. Black play rook e6. So example, if he takes, actually we can just take here and then e5, and then there's all sorts of stuff. This is just too passive. Well, there's d5 there. Up here. And this is just too passive. Knight e4. Ideas like knight f6. Beautiful position. Very aggressive pawn chain. It's end of game there. So yeah, d takes e4 is not desirable. We have rook e6 being played. Also of interest is knight e7 as the defense here, maybe. But in this position, instead of like this, that might be better with f4. So if it takes, we just play f5. And this looks very very dangerous for black's king safety. So anyway, the defensive try chosen was rook e6 here. So there's a question: does Kasparov want to play e5 or f4? He actually plays f4. Yeah, f4. If he played e5, this position might not be entirely terrible for black. In fact, as long as the knight can't get in, the pawn chain, although it looks aggressive, this isn't so clear cut. This position is blocking in the bishop yet again, and there would be a very strong defensive move which would totally justify black's rook on e6 here. This would be totally undesirable. Although in one aspect it's an aggressive pawn chain, it's losing a lot of its functionality here because of black having a particular blockading move, which I hope you can see. Black can blockade with, what can black play here in this position, which would render white's position mostly harmless? If you use a term from Elite, which I used to play on the BBC Micro, mostly harmless white's position would be in this position. Can you see why? f5. Yeah, because we got the two rooks anyway. So e takes. We wouldn't take here, we just take this rook actually. If we take there, that's not good. f5. No, we just take the rook actually. And the queen is protecting g7, so this isn't so bad. Okay, that'll be the end of white's attack. So actually you've got to be careful here. So after this rook e6, Kasparov is careful. Doesn't play e5. Tempting, but black's about to double rooks and play f5 basically on that poor e1. No, the way this is played before the rook's double is f4. Yes, he's blocking in his bishop, it seems, again, but the pawn's going to quickly go to f5 here. Now let's look at some defensive tries. Black played knight e7. If he tries f5, doesn't work because we can take either way with big advantage. And this is too slow now because we just play f5. But surely we hit the queen, right? We hit the queen. No, the queen doesn't matter. Just go here. Doesn't matter about this pawn. We're going to play knight f5. And it's too strong. It's too strong. This check is looking at d7, right? Just my point here is, if check, say I'm giving you a token move, this doesn't work because we've got knight h6 winning the queen there. And if I give you a non-token move, let's have a look at this. Knight h6 is crushing. We're on f7. Black would have to give up the exchange. It's too powerful, the attack here. If rook f8, well, we're just smashing through. We're smashing through there. So basically, let's just go back. This f4 immediately, it's crucial. It's crucial, the difference. I mean, seriously, Kasparov is in total connect with the finesses of the position. I mean, this is on a Microsoft. This is on a very precise scale. Yeah, this is not about generalizations. This is about precision here. E5 basically it renders white in a mostly harmless attack because black, as we established, doubles and plays f5. f4 immediately presents immediate issues with f5, which cannot be parried, it seems, that easily at all. I mean, you can throw at me a defensive try if you want. Any defensive ideas you want to try? I don't think they're particularly easy here after immediate f4. I'm going to show you knight e7 anyway, by the way, before you say knight e7. But if there's anything else you want us to try, just tell me. I'm going to show you 20. This is move 20 after f4. Okay, knight e7 was played. It looks as though white's erupting here. Volcano has erupted. So knight e7 was played. f5. It tears apart this pawn chain. Yeah, g takes, hitting the queen. Queen takes h5, to be followed by, you'd think, well, knight f5, but also e takes f5, or even e5 now is completely different. So black played d takes e4. We have knight takes f5, threatening knight h6 check. We're on f7 here. We have knight takes f5, rook takes f5, and now there are ideas of swinging the other rook in, actually. Right now, this is what happens if rook g6. Well, black played rook a e8. If he plays rook g6, we can take here and swing the rook in like that, actually. So black played rook a e8, and we have rook e3 swinging the rook in like this. We have rook d6 check. Black resigns in this position. So why? Okay, if king f8, that just drops the knight. If king h8, then actually there's a neat little tactic here which forces checkmate in 3. There's a mate in 3 here. Mate in 3. Can you see a mate in 3 in this position? Kasparov's opponent was Božidar Ivanović. Okay, 1983. So there's a mate in 3 here. Yeah. 200 points if you got it. Queen h7. The check, and look at that bishop, it's supporting rook h6. Yeah, so that's not possible. And if rook g6, we just take that, take here, and then play rook f7, double attacking the queen, and these two mate threats. If black has to give up his queen, it's not very good as a... Yep. Now, I want to know if black could have ever got in this h5, h4. That's my immediate curiosity about this game, because it seems a bit tragically out of time by like a second, the whole h5, h4. The reason is, if that was working, then black would have had a bind on e4. So I just want to, out of personal curiosity, go back in this game to this point where the bishop was hemmed in, right? You see, maybe this was a mistake, you know, maybe. I'll go like this. e4 is possible here, because the bishop is holding d4, right? There's no way of embarrassing d4. That bishop, although bad, it's holding the position quite solidly. If white established this position, it's okay for white, potentially. Although it is interesting for black, actually. That's much safer for black. So it seems, I don't know, rook c8 with the idea of cd, and just really it's a discouragement of white playing e4, just trying to open things up and grab some blockade squares. This might be a great way of playing it. But I want to look at also, forget that for a moment, I want to look at this. Couldn't this have ever worked if h5 had been played here? e4, h4. Believe it or not, even in this position, knight f5 is mentioned. Even in this position. So we have a real pawn sack on e4 here. But even this position is dangerous for black to win this pawn. There's a computer tactic here. Well, I wouldn't have seen it necessarily. White's play here, even in this position. Now this looks as though the bishop's bad and black's timed this more perfectly than the game, right? That's my point. Wasn't there a bind on e4? But actually there's a resource here for white, believe it or not, even here. Can you see? I'm not sure I understand the point of it, but I know the first move. I know the first move. It will unravel to me as well. Don't worry. Not knight h6, because there's rook takes d4 here in between the move, and then queen f6. This is pinning the bishop. This is okay for black, apparently. But actually, there's another move. Knight takes g7. So if given another move, knight h5 to lure the knight away from the rook. If king takes, then rook takes f6. And this doesn't work, I think. We can play rook takes f7 there, and c takes d4, and then black's king is really exposed. So just have a look at this. Knight takes g7. The other knight e5 is another tactic idea. Actually, it gets really kind of hairy. Queen h3 gets hairy. Takes. There's takes. This bishop's actually coming alive. Knight moves. This is double attack time. Takes here. I think the bishop comes alive. So even in this, I'm just wondering if this h5 h4 would ever work under any circumstance. It just seems like even here it doesn't seem to do the trick. It's weird, right? Because this is a classic plan coming from Mikhail Botvinnik, I believe, Kasparov's teacher in the Botvinnik School of Chess. But usually you see, I think in the Botvinnik games, you see it's usually supported with a rook first before you play e4. We're getting it here very accelerated. That h4 doesn't seem to yeah, there's knight coming into f5. So if that's really the case, what about taking here? It takes, and then h4 again, knight f5. This works. If rook takes e4, knight, this works. This is, it's getting a bit silly here, but this kind of stuff is dangerous here now. This bishop is not so blocked in. If here we got this rook f6 again, if knight e5 we've got this again, we've still got echoes of what we've just seen actually. Trying to hit this bishop. It's falling to bits for black. This sort of position. I mean, it's an evidence. It's almost a technical evidence that the whole thing about blocking in the bishop is not such a bad idea. I mean, it just seems as though this might have been prone to a tempo gain, which had strategic importance to drag it away from e4, which is black's bind square. But I don't know, there's tactics which are evidence that this can all kind of work. That's fascinating. So there you go. So I don't know how much research has been put into this position, but it seems to withstand some pressure testing, the whole idea, without having to have a rook support e4. Yeah, it seems to withstand a bit of pressure, this position. Okay, so that's enough on this game. So okay, I hope you have a good week, good weekend coming out, good chess week, good chess this year. So okay, have a good time. See you next week. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.